Hi, this is Tail Recap Plus. A large particle collider machine in Chicago is being used for tests by Dr. Martin Steiner and his team of scientists when it quickly starts to melt down. This sets off a dangerous explosion that destroys a lot of property. Hundreds of thousands of people are killed right away, and millions more are hurt. After this event, Chicago is closed off to everyone and is now a no-go zone. But all of a sudden, strange ghosts start showing up here and there. They are the projections of the people who died in the blast and are called remnants. They look just like their real selves, but they can't change reality, so they can hurt people who are still alive. The remains are only around for a short time, and they keep doing the same things over and over again. In other words, a ghost riding a bike today will do the same thing tomorrow. We hope that none of these people spent their last moments jerking the jerkin. At that point, the movie jumps ahead 10 years to a town not far from Chicago. Even here, a lot of people were killed by the explosion, and every day more of their bodies show up. The next person we meet is Veronica Calder, a 17-year-old girl who lives with her mom Anna. Her dad was also one of the people who died that terrible day, and he now comes to breakfast every morning in his leftover form. August Bettner, the physics teacher at my school, is giving a speech about the remains. As of late, Veronica is interested in why dead people from other times are becoming remnants. As an example, she points to a girl who is definitely dressed in 1980s clothes. Bettner doesn't know how to answer this, though. Veronica can't take her eyes off of a guy named Kirk during lunch. He is shy and obsessed with the leftovers. Many people say that he was kicked out of his last school, but no one knows why. That night, while Veronica is in the shower, an unknown fragment appears out of nowhere and scares her. Then something very scary takes place. The strange piece writes, "Run on the mirror," which shouldn't be possible since the words are just projections. Veronica walks up to Bettner the next day, scared, and says she wants to talk to him alone. He says yes and asks her to come over to his house. When they get there, they see his daughter Eva, but she acts cold and leaves. Veronica then talks about what happened the other night, which has made her very upset. But Bettner says it's not possible because the leftovers can't change the real world. He thought that the fall must have given her a headache, which is why she could see things. So far, this teacher hasn't helped me. Later, Veronica chooses to ask Kirk for help because he knows a lot about the things that aren't real. She goes with him to a cave where hundreds of dead fish are swimming. Kirk says that this tunnel usually floods during the wet season and is home to a lot of aquatic life. He comes here every day to look at the fish bones, which seem to be getting more numerous. In other words, the fish that just died are also changing into those things. Veronica gets right to the point when she gets out of the tunnel and asks him to help her figure out what the strange thing from her bathroom is. Kirk says he's busy at first, so she can't do her homework, but he agrees when she says she will. Later, at school, while they are talking about how to solve the problem, Veronica calls the fragment Brian by accident. She can explain how she knows that name. Kirk then tells them they need to get a picture of Brian before they can start their study. They will need a spectrographic lens to do that because regular cameras can't. The trouble is that these things cost a lot of money. Veronica's friend can help her make a homemade spectrographic lens, which is good. Kirk says she should probably make money off of that stuff using normal tools. After that, they put the camera in the bathroom and wait for Brian to show up. He shows up after a while, and the lens seems to be having an effect on him. Right after that, he jumps at Veronica, but the lens breaks, making him disappear. Kirk was able to take a picture of him even though it was a tense meeting. After that, he does some study and finds out about Brian's terrible past. The next day at school, Kirk tells Veronica that Brian was a serial killer who took a girl named Mary hostage and killed her. Then they go to see Mary's mother to find out more. The second one says Brian followed his daughter around for weeks and finally got her to agree to go with him. No one saw her alive after that. Later that night, she was found dead. And the next day, Brian did something terrible. The next scene shows Veronica and Kirk doing research at the school library. They figure out that Mary was killed on her birthday after putting all the signs together. It was February 29, which is also known as leap year. Veronica has the same birthday, which makes her wonder if all of these events might be linked. A strange person walks up behind them while they're talking. Things go dark for a moment, and Veronica drops her book. She finds the word run written on it several times when she picks it up. He could have used some of that space to give more information, for sure. The next day, Kirk is called into the school office by the director, who asks him why he went to see Mary's mom. The director doesn't believe him when he says it was for a project. She is seen at a basketball game somewhere else. She desperately tries to get in touch with Kirk, but he doesn't answer. At the same time, we see the director going up the stairs after getting a text message. Veronica starts to see the strange Brian in different places at the basketball court. He stands on the other side of the court at one point. Veronica then gets up and tries to reach him. She has no idea that she is getting in the way of her play. Strange things happen when she finally comes to her senses. Everyone is scared when the principal falls through the roof all of a sudden. Later, Kirk goes to Veronica's house and tells her that he told the principal his whole idea. He thinks that the poor man died because of it. Veronica, on the other hand, thinks it was just a mistake. As they talk some more, Kirk says that he started looking into the remains because he never got to say goodbye to his dad. The second person died instantly in the blast, and his body has never been seen again. Kirk hopes that one day he can find out more about what's going on and get in touch with his dad. Later that night, Veronica has a scary dream in which she sees Brian grabbing her. She also falls into a frozen lake where two female ghosts are swimming normally. Anna comes into her room when she wakes up and tells her that she has to go to another city for a job interview. She can come back for 3 days. Veronica is upset because her mom will miss her birthday, which only comes around once every 4 years. Later, Kirk sees something strange while the dad, who is still alive, is sitting in his usual breakfast position. The man is carrying a newspaper that came out 3 years after the explosion, which has caught his attention. There was a murder and the girls, Emma and Claire, went missing. This is the major story. Kirk writes down the information right away and starts to look into it. He soon finds out that they were both killed on February 29, the same day they were born. In the next scene, they run into a friend who tells them that Brian and Claire were dating. It turns out that Claire died in the same building where the explosion started. Because her death was so horrible, a lot of people come to the lab to see the remains of her body being used to reenact the death. When Veronica and Kirk hear this, they don't understand what Claire and Brian were doing in the lab. So they can find out more, they choose to go to Chicago. That night, they get to the empty city, which has been totally taken over by the survivors. These things stay around for hours, and there are a lot of them. This might be because Chicago is ground zero and whatever is bringing the body parts has more power here. They don't care about this and go to the lab, where many people are watching Claire's leftover work. The woman is climbing a set of stairs, which could be her way of trying to get away. She is caught, though, and brutally killed. Kirk sees Dr. Martin Steiner in the crowd at that moment and calls his name. The second person, who seems to be living alone, tries to get away, but the first two catch up with him. They question him a lot, and he doesn't want to talk, but he does. Martin shows them his main lab and tells them that when something explodes, it leaves behind the sound of a dead person. To show them an example, he shows them the shadows of the dead people who died in Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Dr. Martin says that these echoes are a way for live people to talk to dead people. This part of the story doesn't seem to care. This idea was used by his team to help many people who were close to dying. But their main goal was to bring a dead person back to life. They had to find a living person whose birthday was the same as the person they wanted to bring back to life. The method used was known as spectral transfer, but their experiment failed, and there was a huge explosion that killed many people. Dr. Martin then says that Brian was one of his assistants who worked on the project with him. But when Claire died, he changed. The doctor thinks that Brian killed the other people with the same birthday as Claire so that he could bring her back to life through spectral transcraft. Meanwhile, Kirk steals a picture from the lab to look into it later. It's always work and study for that boy. Then Dr. Martin tells them again that what the government is telling them is not true. Their remains can change the present, and they pose a danger to the living. Veronica thinks Brian might be trying to kill her after hearing all of this. She tries to find out more because they both were born on February 29. But the doctor, who is filled with guilt, does something terrible all of a sudden. Does he do that now? Are you sure? In the next scene, the two go back to the school to look into things more. But as soon as they get there, some officers catch Kirk. In his locker, they found a gun. To get help, Veronica runs up to Bettner and tells him everything that's going on. He now believes her because he has already talked to Mary's mom. Also, he should do something because it's time. Then he says that Brian was kicked out of his last school because, just like today, they found a gun in his locker. Veronica doesn't trust him after this, so she chooses to avoid him from now on. It's still not fixed, though, for the reason that tomorrow is February 29. Veronica thinks Brian is going to kill her. Bettner has an answer, though. He tells her that he will make a safe room for her in her house. The remnants will supposedly not be able to get into this room because it will be lined with lead. Veronica knows she has no choice but to agree, so she does it right away. Anna gets to the job site in the meantime and finds that no one has called her. Someone really did pull a dirty joke on her. That night, Kirk goes to see Veronica and tries to talk to her, but she is angry and acts cold. Then he says that he carried the gun at his old school to protect himself, not to hurt other people. He doesn't know who put the gun in his locker yesterday, though. She still doesn't want to talk, so she tells him to leave. There, the two work for hours to make the special room what it is. She is told to stay the night there until the danger is over. Kirk, meanwhile, looks into the picture he took in the lab and finds something shocking. Bettner was also a scientist on Dr. Martin's team. It turns out, because of this, Kirk knows the man is up to no good. He tries very hard to call Veronica, but can't because there is no network in the room. He has no choice but to rush to save her. Kirk sees Bettner's daughter, Eva's remains, as soon as he steps outside the house. This proves she is not a real person after all. After this, the movie shows a flashback where all the riddles are solved. On that terrible day, Eva was also in the lab, and Bettner did everything he could to save her, but failed. He blamed himself all the time for her death, which is when he thought of using phantom trans as a way to bring her back to life. To do this, he kidnapped several girls, including Claire. But all of his experiments failed. When Brian found out about this, he tried to warn Mary, but Bettner killed him too. The evil professor then changed his name and started working at the school to get personal records of the students. This is how he found out that Veronica is a February 29. It turns out that Bettner put the gun in Kirk's locker and called Anna for an interview. He planned to use her for imaginary nonsense. Let's go back to now. Bettner comes up behind Kirk and knocks him out as he tries to call the cops. After that, he buries the poor guy alive. He then goes back to the special room where Veronica is staying. The girl still doesn't know that the guy wants to kill her. She does remember having a picture of the same thing when she cuts her finger, though. Then she figures out that the visions were trying to tell her something. In other words, Bettner is a warning sign. She tries to get away because she is scared. However, the bad guy finds her. He's about to kill her. But then Veronica's dad walks in, taking Bettner's attention away for a moment. She takes this chance to hit him with one of her skates and then runs outside. He does, however, catch her again and tries to choke her when she has nowhere to run. He and Veronica both fall into the freezing water when Veronica breaks the ice under them. But the bad guy is still suffocating her there. He is about to kill her when Brian's body comes back and frees Veronica. At the same time, the rest of Mary shows up and drags Bednar down, killing him in the process. Veronica gets to the top, but she isn't strong enough to climb back up. Kirk gets there just in time to save her, though. He found himself under the ground and on the edge of death when his father's body came back to life and dug him out. Subscribe for more videos like this. Turn on notifications and leave a like to help the channel out. Thank you for watching.